Welcome to the complete motion path animation tutorial for both Windows and the Mac OS version of PowerPoint. Hi, I'm Les McCarter, where I bring my decades of expertise to you for free. In our earlier tutorial, we covered all about using the tool of animation to bring focus to your slide deck. But you can step up your game by adding the extra pizzazz of motion to your animation points, exactly like you're seeing right here on the screen. I'm going to show you how to take complete control of this sometimes frustrating tool with my professional guidance. I'm going to cover all the controls, including the confusing cursor icons, plus the various ways to edit motion paths, and we're going to go deep into creating automated, stacked animations one after another, using it just like stagecraft. Along the ways, I'm going to show you both Mac and Windows commands when the menus deviate and uncover some hidden menus along the way. So let's go power up and learn all about PowerPoint motion path animation. I'm working on a Windows computer with the latest Office 365, and the commands work back to PowerPoint 2013. For the most part, this works the same on the Mac version of Office 365, but some slightly different menus, which I will highlight along the way. Here's our first introductory slide to show motion path animation in action. With the slideshow running, our first click moves our cat up to the right-hand corner. The second click has the kitty chasing the mouse. The third click moves the bee to the center, and our last click gets the title moving around and changing colors. So let's see how to do this on our own. If you've not worked with slide animation before, do look for our YouTube tutorial on the standard animation listed above. Note that I have one for Windows and I have another YouTube tutorial for the Mac. So to use the advanced animation, you still need to go to the Animation tab on the Rib menu and then select the object you want to animate. Let's do the cat chasing the mouse. For our Windows users, we'll do the drop-down box to see all the animation, but for our Mac users, you need to click the action icon called Path Animation, and the drop-down list will show you only path animations, which our Windows users need to scroll to the bottom of the selection list to find Motion Path. So the wording is slightly different, but still the same tool. Let's choose the simplest motion path, lines. When we click it, our cat moves downward, but we don't want it to show up there. Instead, we're going to grab the second ghosted image, drag it to the location that we wish to have it end up at, and then let go of our mouse. Bingo, we now have an animation of the cat going from one location to the next. Let's do it again for the bee. We'll select it, but this time in Windows, we're going to choose the action icon of Add Animation. For the Mac users, they'll still use Motion Path. Once applied, we'll grab the ghosted bees. In a few moments, I'm going to show you the secrets of how to properly select it, and then we're going to move it to the top right-hand corner in a straight line. We're not done. In most professional presentations, you will not be animating bees and kittens, but more likely text, like our title. I'm going to add a more animated motion of circle, but to add even more punch, I'm going to go back in and add a second additional animation of grow shrink. It's important that we choose an emphasis group because if we don't, the title will disappear as it would with an entrance or exit animation. And then finally, I'm going to go back one more time and add an additional emphasis of font color change. Let's check this out in a slideshow. But I want to only run the slideshow from this slide, not from the beginning. So I'm going to use the slideshow icon found on the bottom right-hand corner. First click, and there goes the mouse. Second click, there goes our bee. Third click, there's our motion going in a circle. Whoa, wait a minute. Another click to make it grow, and then another click to actually change colors. No. We actually want the title to go all at the same time. So let's fix it by going up to something called the animation pane. And here we see each of our animations listed with a mouse next to it, meaning that it requires a click. If you look closely, you can see all our animations, such as the bee and the kitten animation with the lines, and then the title with the circle, and then items 4 and 5 are the effects that we applied to the title, and those are the ones that we want to happen at the exact same time that the title circle is going. So we're going to change to start not on a click, but start with the previous item so that they will all three go at the exact same time. Notice that once clicked, the last two title items no longer have a mouse icon next to them, which indicates that they're going to fire off at the exact same time as when number 3 click happens. Now in slideshow, when we click the first time, mouse and cat goes, second time, there goes the bee, and the third time with a single click, the motion path title circles, changes colors, and grows. With that thorough introduction of motion path animation, we need to get into the details, as this is probably one of the most frustrating PowerPoint features if you don't understand the fundamentals. Let's start off showing how to add some basic path motion. As always, you need to work in the animation ribbon menu and then select the object you want to animate. It can be a text box or in our case, this bicycle man sticker. Then you go to the animation list. For the Mac, choose Path Animation action icon, and for Windows, the drop-down box of all the animations scrolling down to motion path grouping. In my opinion, the line selection is the easiest to control. Once applied, wait for just a moment and you will see a preview of the animation, and when done, there'll be a ghosted version of the image at the ending point. To change the location of the ending point, move your mouse over the center of the ghost ending point until you see the double arrow, not the four-way arrow, and then click and drag to the new location. Let's do it a second time with a right-hand turn. Select the object, choose the animation, wait for the ghosted end image, then select the end image with a double arrow, not the four-way, and move the endpoint. Note that we have no control of the actual motion path, just the end landing location. I'll address that path edit in a few moments. Before we go too far, let's examine the preview action icon. When you first select a new animated motion, you get a preview of how it's going to play out. If you want to see it again, just go to the top left corner and hit the preview button, and it will play out again automatically. See that it plays out both of our animated bikes without the use of a mouse click. We'll see how it works on the big screen in a moment when we do a slideshow, but let's add one more complex path and see how that does not behave like our two earlier simple motion paths. This time, we're going to select more motion paths to see way more choices. Mac user friends, hang in there and you'll see where you'll find even more choices for you in a few moments. In Windows, if you click any of these choices, it'll preview the effect before accepting the motion path. Once you find one you like, click it and watch it. Selecting the curvy right path, we get a lot more action, but some different behavior. With this complex path, there is no two-arrow endpoint to select. And that is one of the frustrating things of PowerPoint motion paths, the inconsistent interaction with the objects. What we can do is stretch the path area, but when we do that, look how the starting point on the left moves slightly at the same time. And when we preview this, I want you to watch closely on the third mini choice animation as the biker will jump a space to the right to start his curvy right motion path. And when we return, we do see how the starting point is just slightly to the right of the original image, which is still part of the slide. Watch again as we run this on the slideshow and the third animation jumps, then executes the motion. Jump. So this is not very smooth, and we're going to have to fix it. But we also need to nail down some of the selection and movement problems found within PowerPoint. First off, you always need to be in the animation menu to manage or add in new animation. Let me quickly add in a straight line animation, and then we're going to look very closely for the two-headed arrow before clicking to relocate the endpoint. And as I drag, you're going to see that the point now turns into a plus sign until I drop it at the new location. Look closely. A big issue is managing the object and not the path. Look at when I click the biker object and drag the right grab point. It does not impact the path, but just makes the biker object bigger or wider here. I will undo the stretching of the biker object and this time attempt to locate and then click the path. I know I have the path selected as the ghost image shows up. Now let's see the difference between the diagonal two-headed arrow versus the four-way arrow. The two-headed diagonal arrow indicates that I'm about to move the endpoint to a new location, but the four-way arrow means I am moving the whole collection path as a single unit to a new location, both starting and ending points. And when I preview it, you'll see that the biker jumps to the start point and to the end point, not as smooth, and it's more clear if I go into the slideshow view. Watch when I click, he jumps and then he does his motion. This is not exactly what we're looking for. So to recap this important point, the four-way arrow will move the path, but if you can find the two-arrow diagonal when you click and drag, that will move the endpoint, leaving the starting point anchored at the original location. And here we see the smooth animation in our slideshow from start to end. I cannot emphasize enough the simplicity of the simple straight line. You can easily move the endpoint and it will not give you headaches. Once you add the more complex lines, things do get messy. The simple curved line would appear to have just a start and an end, which is true, but with the bending path, it messes with us when we try to move it around, which we've seen before. In our attempt to make Hot Dog Man's arc longer and higher, the truck now jumps to a higher location than the static slide image. Watch as we go through the slideshow, and we'll see that when we get to the Hot Dog Man, it jumps up and does the arc. Let's see if we can go ahead and fix that. With the four-way arrow, we can grab the whole animation collection and move it down so it lines back up on the original starting point. And then when we run this, there's our first line, and now Hot Dog Man does not jump up, it just does its curve. So we've solved that with the four-way arrow. Now with our question man, let's go in and choose an even more complex path. When we do the drop-down list, we're going to choose more animation paths and see all that's available. I will choose a zigzag motion with the goal of getting the question man to zigzag upwards in a diagonal fashion. Just stretching the whole path does not give that upward trajectory, so we want to look for a new cursor shape indicator by hovering over the circle arrow and click the rotating path. While holding down the mouse button, we can drag it upwards, and then with it selected, we can then reposition it back at the starting point, go to the end point, and we can now stretch it out to get our upward trajectory as desired, as opposed to just growing the whole path. Let's take a look. There's our straight bike. Here's our Hot Dog Man doing the curve. And now watch Question Man as he climbs up to the right-hand corner in a zigzag motion. One more tip. Earlier, I recommended that you make your starting object go to your desired location and size first before adding the path. But there may be times that you need to resize after adding the motion path. Make sure you click on the object and not the path. If you have the path selected, you will see the ghosted image. We want just the object, and then you can resize the object by grabbing a corner and stretching or shrinking. Then when we go in to play the motion path, we're going to see that the newly sized image will follow the exact path with the new size from beginning to end. We'll later on see how we can change the size dynamically with an additional animation trick. More control and more trouble ahead. Editing the motion paths with greater control. Starting with our simple straight line, let's introduce the Effect Option Action drop-down list choices. Here are some simplistic choices for changing the path to go up or down or left or right. Plus, we have the extra bonus of getting Bike Man to ride backwards by reversing the path directions. But note that we cannot edit the path. That choice is grayed out, and it will be for some of the paths, but not all of them, as we'll see in just a moment. But for our Mac users, it's the effect options where you get to see the expanded effects paths. On the Mac version of PowerPoint, you select your base motion path, such as waves, and then in the drop-down effect options, you will see additional path effects to select from, so it requires those extra steps. So, back to complex path editing for both Windows and Mac. I've added a simple arc motion animation, which introduces 3 bend points between point A and point B. Now, with the more complex path, the drop-down effects option menu provides the choice to edit path. With my mouse, we need to pay close attention when trying to grab the bend points. If I get a square cursor with a plus key when clicking, I'm adding a new edit path. See how we went from 3 to 4 edit points? But instead, if I see a see-through square with 4-point triangles, I am now selecting an existing edit point that can then be dragged around. Next, let's look at the lever controls for a selected bend point. Each end of the lever will let us shape the harshness and direction of the bend. Click and experiment with both ends to see how the bend turns. And in slideshow mode, here's our backwards bicycle man and our crazy path question mark man. Here's a quick tip of how to remove an animation. Make sure that the animation pane is open. Click on the path that you want to remove, do the downward arrow, and choose remove. Simple enough. More motion path annoyances. I do find it hard to identify motion paths when certain color backgrounds are used, which is why this tutorial has been in white. Every object on a PowerPoint slide is on its own layer. If this statement is a new concept for you, look above for our in-depth YouTube tutorials on managing layers. Watch as we add a new line animation to our bicycle man, and when we see it in the slideshow mode, he rises to the top of the skyscrapers. But if I click on our skyscrapers and I do a right click, we can say bring this object to the front. And now when we run the slideshow, Mr. Bikeman now moves behind the skyscraper objects, looking like he's parking inside. One last advanced topic before we build a business animated slide: adding multiple animations. For animation 1, we're going to add a motion line path. Once the motion path is added, next we are going to select the object, not the existing animation path, and go to Add Animation for Windows. For our Mac users, you need to click off the object and then back onto the individual object to stack the effects. For our second animation, it is critical that we select Emphasis Animation. Not entrance, not exit. Emphasis is the yellow or orange icons. Choose the exit or entrance categories will make the object disappear or reappear in an unplanned fashion. So choose the emphasis grouping. I'm choosing Grow Shrink, which will cause Bikeman to grow. And when we test this out in slideshow mode, it doesn't work. Bikeman moves and then grows. We want this to happen at the same time, so we need to go back and change the timing. This is done with the animation pane action icon. When turned on, we're able to see all of our animations and what controls them. Animation line 1 is the grow line controlled by a mouse click, and line 2 shows the grow shrink animation also controlled by a mouse click. We want the grow shrink animation to happen at the same time, so we'll change start with previous. Now we can check it out and see how it goes. Watch carefully as Bikeman grows as he moves. And for kicks, let's add a spin at the end with a third animation of an emphasis spin, not an entrance, not an exit. And this time, we don't want the spin to happen during the move. Instead, we will choose to start after, not with the previous item. look carefully as I highlight each of the animation. The grow shrink is with previous. Our first line is on click, so we're going to choose the third animation and change it from on click to after previous. And now with a single click, Bike Man moves, grows, and at the very end does a little spin. So we now need to put together everything to create a professional business presentation without cutesy sticker men. Here's a final slide that we're going to recreate. Let's preview it in a slideshow mode and then build it. Our first animation is the title coming down in a straight line. The second animation is our second quarter growing and moving to the right, the third quarter growing and moving to the right, and the last quarter growing to the right. Let's go build this. With our shell slide to work with, let's add a rectangle by going to the Insert Ribbon menu, selecting Shape, and we're going to add in a rectangle to draw. So I'll position it and resize it, and next I need to make 3 copies of it. There are multiple ways to make copies, and if you want some hints, take a look above for our listing for our YouTube tutorial. With the 3 copies, we now have 4 quarters to work with. Next, I want to lay them out roughly in the right spot. As I drag one of the items over, take a look at the very top. You'll see a faint red line to show that we're aligned at the top. Of course, we've got a video for aligning objects, see above. Just to make sure that they're perfectly aligned, let's select the group, and then we're going to go back up to our commands, and we're going to choose the Arrange command and Align. There's a variety of choices for Align, but we're going to align them all so they match at the top. And they're now perfectly placed on the page, at least as alignment. But we also need to go back to Align, and we want to distribute them so that they're perfectly spaced evenly. So we're going to go ahead and choose to distribute horizontally. Our next task is to create 4 different bar heights in a chart. We're going to do this manually, which may require math on your behalf for your actual data. But in this case, I'm going to cheat and make it relatively simple. I'm going to choose the third quarter, and then I'm going to go up and change the size by going to the Shape Format command. We could do this the hard way by changing the height in inches, but I'm going to do the drop-down box for size, and we'll see the pop-out for Format Shape. And here, we need to make sure that the aspect ratio is turned off because we only want to change the height. With it off, we can then go up and change the height from 100%. We want to drop it down to 80% for our third quarter. And once completed, the third quarter is now 80% of the far right bar. Let's do the same for the second quarter. We're going to make that 60%. We'll click, and then we're going to go to the first bar and make that 20%. Once again, for your actual presentation, you may have to do some math, but you get the concept here. Next, we'll align them all to the bottom. And finally, we get to the motion animation. I'm going to select the second quarter. I'm going to add an align motion path. Once in place, I'm going to go to the effects option and tell it to go to the left. Then make the bar line up on top of the first quarter. Remember to let the sample ghost image settle down, then go in and make sure you've got the 2-way arrow so that you can position the ending point, not move the whole path. Let's preview this in the slideshow. And when we go up there and click, we see that yes, it is working, but it's going backwards, which we can easily fix like we did with making the bicycle man ride backwards. And that means going up to the effect option and choosing reverse path direction. We want to give the appearance that the second quarter is growing, but unlike before, I do want to use the entrance command because the second quarter shape should not be showing until we start the animation. Before I warned about using entrance commands, but now we're going to understand how entrance commands such as zoom is going to add impact to our motion graphics. And like before, we want the 2 animations to work together. So we're going to go to the animation pane, do the start drop-down box, and choose with previous. But in the slideshow, we see that we got it wrong. The image is already on the slide before the motion path begins, and then as it moves, it does the entrance disappear and reappear and zoom. We got the order wrong. Let's have the entrance first, so the object is not on the slide until we click, and then have it zoom and move. Now that I'm confident that I got it right, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the actions for both the third and the fourth quarter by adding the motions, the entrance animations, and positioning everything just correct with the reverse order. There are a lot of steps, so I'm going to speed this up, but it's worth considering that if you elect to build these kind of slides, you need to decide whether it's worth it, because there's a lot of effort to make it just right when there are many other simplistic tools inside of PowerPoint that may not be as glamorous, but can be effective. I am going to add some finishing touches by adding text to each of the boxes to represent the amounts. And then I'm going to go through and add a dash of color to differentiate the 4 quarters. Then we'll be ready to test it out. With the 40% box as our top layer, each of the 3 following quarters do appear, zoom out, and move over with our line motion. This looks great, but we can add a few extra touches by animating text. To use motion path to get the title to move onto the slide, we need to move the title completely outside the slide. Then we can go in and add a motion path, in our case, my favorite, the line, and we can then position the endpoint to control where the title will show up. It's nice to see the ghost to line it up just perfectly. And you must always test. In this case here, when we go into the slideshow mode, we're going to find that the title entrance looks right, but it's out of order as it shows up after all the other animations. However, we know how to fix that by going back into the animation pane, dragging it from the bottom to the top, and it's now at the exact location where we want it to be for our entrance. Okay, we're almost there, but I got a couple issues with this still for us to finish up to make it look just right. The 40% box is there from the beginning and the project spend rate bullet point. So we need to animate those to come in after the title. So I'm going to go the easy route. And for the project spend rate, I'm going to use the bullet point float in tool. And for the 40%, I'm going to have it fade in. And then I need to make sure that I can rearrange the order to get everything just right. And I present to you our finalized business professional motion path slide. It was a lot of work, but it is well done. There you go. You're now the stage director of all your animated motion paths techniques. If this was useful, then do like it and share it with coworkers and with friends. Leave your ideas and questions below in the comment section of YouTube. Do subscribe, as it encourages me to make more free tutorials for you. And look for our other tutorials, including the 10 best slide transitions and slick interactive slide presentation tricks. If you want the complete PowerPoint training school set of classes, visit our website of power-up.training for everything about PowerPoint. Until next time, go power up.